A very warm evening to the esteemed panelists and the participants. Today we have gathered for a panel discussion which has been organized by AIR and AIR Law Academy and Research Center. The topic for today is the pandemic eclipse on marital relations, a spike in domestic violence. I, Jankriti Badani, the moderator for today's discussion, welcome you all to this striking panel discussion. So today on panel, we have three esteemed guests. Um, Let me introduce to each one of those. Our first panelist for today is someone whom I'm sure we have seen on several television debates and deliberations, Advocate Aishwarya Bhati, with an embellished professional career of 22 years at the bar. Ma'am was designated as senior advocate in 2019 and became the first woman from Rajasthan to be coveted this stature. Ma'am was appointed as Additional Solicitor General of India in June 2020. And before that, Advocate Bhati has also been former Additional Advocate General for the state of UP for 3 years and advocate on record for 13 long years. An alumnus of JNV University Jodhpur and a gold medalist in LLM, Ma'am is also a solo glider pilot, exemplary shooter, a horse rider who has advocated and voiced in myriad of issues before the Apex Court. We welcome you, ma'am. Our second panelist for today is Advocate Veena Rali, ma'am, with 4 decades of professional standing as an advocate at Delhi High Court, and who is presently the organizing secretary of Samadhan, that is Delhi High Court's Mediation and Conciliation Center, which leads over 200 panelists and the mediators. After receiving her basic training in mediation from India, ma'am received her advanced training in mediation from S.J. Quinney College of Law, University of Utah at USA, and Strauss Institute of Dispute Resolution, University of Pepperdine, Malibu. Ma'am is an accredited mediator with Chartered Institute of Arbitrators at London and has handled over thousands of cases, spending enormous hours helping the people in dispute resolution. We welcome you, ma'am. Our third panelist for today is Advocate Pallavi Pratap, ma'am, who is advocate on record at Supreme Court of India. In her 10 years of standing at the Supreme Court, ma'am has presented several parties in wide range of cases, including the state governments, nationalized banks, social welfare organizations, and has been a strong advocate for legal literacy. After initial schooling and BA from Delhi, ma'am did MBA in Finance and Marketing from La Trobe University, Melbourne, Australia, and is an alumnus of Lucknow University. Ma'am has been awarded as Most Promising Lawyer of 2018 by Legal Desire magazine and BW Legal World 40 Under 40 Lawyers for the year 2020. We welcome you, ma'am.
Thank you so much for having me here.
So with this striking panel, it's an extreme honor to have such a panel, which is a true reflection of women empowerment. And with this note, let's begin with the panel discussion. And let me introduce the topic to you. So today, since we are discussing on one of the most important issues leading to the numerous breakdowns of marital relations during the pandemic COVID-19. During the pandemic, we have witnessed that not even a day ago, we saw a woman taking over one of the highest positions at the strongest country. And at the same time, we are seeing that there are women who are suffering miserably. So the rhetoric being that there is unprecedented spike in domestic violence cases, and it has become a major issue, which is not only in India, but throughout the globe. So, which is also being termed as shadow pandemic. The first quarter of lockdown had witnessed that there was doubled cases registered regarding the domestic violence abuses. And therefore, it becomes imperative that we need to understand what was the reason behind the shooter, what is the existing framework to address such issues, and why the accessibility to the mechanism is the question. What are the changing patterns or the loopholes, or is there any scope for reform? So with this scenario and the platform, we'll try to reach out as many people with the ideas which the panelists have. So if the panelists permit, we'll begin with the session, and I would like to pose the first question. So Advocate Bhati, the first question I would like to pose upon you. Ma'am, what is the legal and institutional framework which we have for the marital disputes, especially when we are dealing with domestic violence? As in, what is the framework through which people can access it?
Thank you, Jagriti, for this very nice, beautiful and warm and affectionate welcome to each one of us, and also very interesting introductory notes to the topic that you have given. See, first let me tell you, by its very nature, we are talking about a violence that is domestic, that is happening in the four walls of home, that is happening in a domestic relationship, in a domestic atmosphere, and essentially that is a place where one is supposed to be at its most secure. So this problem is the core of this problem is that this is the problem of protectors turning predators. And when protectors who are meant to be it's supposed to be a safe haven, it is supposed to be a place that you feel at home, you feel at home, you feel safe, you feel you belong there, you are you are in best hands, so to speak, at that place. And at that place, if you are violated, if you have to if you have to face violence of different kinds, that is the problem that we are talking about now. Domestic violence is not just in the matrimonial relations alone. The Domestic Violence Act of 2005 has actually enhanced the ambit much more. So if you're going to talk about all kinds of domestic violence, then that is Domestic Violence Act is the repository for any kind of recourse or any complaints, etc., that have to be there. But matrimonial violence also can be addressed in different forms. So matrimonial violence, essentially, if it is just matrimonial wrongs that you have to agitate, then unfortunately nothing has happened on Article 44. So we don't have a uniform matrimonial law which is gender neutral and religion neutral. So we are all governed by our own personal laws in that. So we have to, our matrimonial wrongs are defined in our personal laws. But those remedies are essentially remedies which would be available to you when if you want if you want maintenance for your for yourself, or a shelter, you want alimony, you want a matrimonial home, or some those kind of protections, and children custody, etc. Those are the issues which are there, dowry related. Those remedies are available in the matrimonial laws. And if it is a domestic violence remedy, that is available even in matrimonial relations, this is available. Another very exciting thing that I find about the Domestic Violence Act is that this is a very hybrid law. It's not completely civil, it's not completely criminal. And I think it's a master stroke. Frankly, if you ask me as a lawyer, I think it's a master stroke, because if you make something criminal, then you don't have the civil remedies. Sending people to jail does not provide succor to the victims. It takes a very long time, and it does not necessarily provide a compensation or any kind of relief or rehabilitation to the victim. So making it civil allows it to have that framework where you have protection orders, where you can, and it addresses, the definition of domestic violence here covers not just physical violence, but emotional violence, financial violence, sexual violence. All this is covered. Marital rapes can be complained of against in under this regime. And interestingly, after the initial orders, if they are violated, then it has a slightly criminal contour to it. It is a hybrid law, so it converts into somewhat penal remedies available to it. And that is how it actually addresses everyone. So it moves out of the shackles of the personal laws, and is applicable universally to all women who may be victims of domestic abuse. What is important is you need to be a woman who's in a domestic relationship, and if you are abused in any of the ways, then you have a remedy available. And of course, if abuse is more it's a stronger more strenuous kind of abuse, then the offenses are also made out under the IPC, which are more serious penal offenses, and that remedy is also available. So the legal mechanism is this. And the complaint mechanism is also very interesting for domestic violence and matrimonial relations, essentially domestic violence issues, because there are helplines which are available in every district, every town. You don't need to go to a police station to complain for a domestic violence These helplines are run by governmental agencies through ministries, women and child ministries in all across the country. There are NGOs who are accredited NGOs. So that whole mechanism and the provision of free legal aid for all of such victims of domestic abuse is also a very strong mechanism that has been created. But it was required because this is a case of protectors turning into predators, so it had to have this extra added dimensions.
Thank you so much for the insight, because actually the protectors turn out to be the predators, which is a fact. So going forward with this, Advocate Rali, I might like to pose this next question to you. Ma'am, how would you decipher that there are certain reasons for a shift in the pattern in which the abuses have been happening? The abuses which were happening before the lockdown and during the lockdown might be a bit different from what is expected. And especially there had been certain fixed stereotypical ideology that violence might not be as prominent in the urban areas as there is in the rural areas. However, the data might differ accordingly. So, ma'am, how exactly did the pandemic aggravate the issue, and what is your comment on the current scenario regarding the domestic abuse?
Jankruti, wonderful question. But before I answer the question, I really thank you for providing this platform along with Aishwarya and Pallavi to talk on this topic. See, Jankruti, what has been the situation? The general presumption is that violence or abuse is mainly common in the lower strata. But the reality is not such. We find various types of abuse, whether it is physical, emotional, economical, sexual, even in urban areas. The difference is that in the lower strata, what happens? People are living in small houses, jhuggies, clusters. Either people living in adjacent houses come on their own when they hear some voice, or the lady, because there is no shame attached to that particular group of people, they walk out of their houses and they raise their voice, or sometimes even they abuse their husband. It has been happening to that extent so far as the lower strata is concerned. It has always been there, as Aishwarya also said, that it has always been even in the urban strata. The only thing is, mostly people, both the spouses are working to meet needs of the family. So what is happening is that they are getting an opportunity to move out of their houses, talk to their friends, talk to their relatives, and come back their home, start again. So that means ignoring certain things. But why? To maintain relationship, because in our country, we have been conditioned in such a way that from the beginning itself, if you see any woman, any girl born in any house, what is taught to her? तुम्हें खाना बनाना आना चाहिए. You have to build that house. You are the homemakers. Earlier, this was the only perception for a lady to understand that I am the homemaker. Now it was the option of the ladies to stand on their own feet and prepare themselves even for economically strong. Then what happened ultimately? Both the burdens came on the woman. So certain things which are conditioned in such a way from our childhood that we cannot think going beyond our relationship. So what happened? That these all activities of perpetrators leading to breaking of homes, our conditioning was such that we were just keeping them or parking them on the side, because we were mentally not prepared to take those calls, or we were getting some outlet somewhere and we were giving ourselves a consolence. Okay, I can manage. Okay, I can manage. And looking at the stamina of the woman, it is more expected from a woman, and she has been doing it for the sake of the family, for the sake of the relationship, and then particularly the honor of the family, because that has been very much important, more particularly not from the side of the husband, because he may not like that, but for her own father, her own mother, what people will say, that what type of upbringing have I been given. So in urban areas, we find equal opportunities are being given to both boys and girls for education. So at that point of time, now I am supposed to work, I am supposed to provide for financial support also within the family, and sheer economical burden of the family also. And during this lockdown, what happened? Now the four corners of the house became everything: school for children, office for husband, and I as a woman, now what I have to do? I have to look after the children, their homework, they are connected online with the school activities, then I have to look after the parents if there are any parents in the family, and then women have to look after even to ensure that husbands are getting a safe corner for their office work also. What happens to the work of the woman? Nobody cares. And at this point of time, when there is no help, whether it is part-time or full-time, in the absence of part-time or full-time help, all physical burden of the family came on the woman mainly, except few. There are exceptions now. People are really changing. There is a transitory period, so people are changing. So what happened ultimately, that her office activities became the last priority. No outlet, no movement outside the house, no talking to anybody else. Now, what is the result? People started realizing what actually abuse can do to them, how it can psychologically affect them. So people realized the spike, and the coexistence within the four corners of the house with so much burden on one member erupted everything. So there was purge in the rise of you can say reporting of such type of cases, and even the pandemic was affected and that were realized in our country. We were getting the voices from other countries that it has risen so much. That happened in our country as well. So I think the load of everything, financial, economical, and other things, women could not take, and the voice came out. People realized that they are also suffering from some type of abuse, which was being ignored earlier because of the facilities still given to them, maybe outing of the house or talking to someone, close to someone. So that was something which gave rise to violence or abuse, you can say, or recognition of the abuse.
Right, ma'am. Thank you so much for this to the precise insight, because I agree that it's a social and psychological stigma which is going on around the cases which is happening within the domestic boundaries. So continuing this, I would like to pose this next question before Advocate Pratap. Ma'am, the signs and patterns of abuse and the marital issues have been, as discussed earlier, have seen a consistent shift. Definitely, they cannot be placed into some straitjacket formula. And as Advocate Bhati and Advocate Veena ma'am has already discussed how it has been going on within India. Ma'am, what exactly is abuse is a question which remains, because abuse can be said to have multiple meanings, and we do not know exactly what exactly would be the meaning of abuse. So ma'am, I would like you to kindly put an insight into the meaning of abuse, and if you have certain personal narrations in your Supreme Court, the cases which you have dealt with, or the cases which you have seen in your day-to-day area, could you please narrate on those two, ma'am?
Thank you so much. I hope I'm audible. So about the abuse that that I kind of came across, specifically as far as pandemic is concerned, because a couple of fortunately, unfortunately, I did get a lot of calls from people, especially women who were victims of abuse. Specifically, I remember in the initial few days, there was this lady who called me up, and like Veena ma'am just said, the instances of probably domestic violence is more in urban area, because this lady calls me up from a very posh area of South Delhi, and she says that my husband has just called me up. The husband and wife were not living together. The wife was living separately. The husband comes, and there is a full lockdown, by the way, at that time in Delhi. He's come and he's threatened, and he said that I'm going to throw acid on your face if you do not agree to step out of the house that you are occupying in just now, because that happens to be the father-in-law's property. And she called me up and she was all shaken because she did not know what to do. And the police, as we all know, at that point in time had more COVID responsibilities to meet out to, because at that point in time, the lockdown was very effective. So I think the first thing I could do was actually ask her to call the 100 number and try and figure out some solution for that. Interestingly, the man then sends a driver who starts to live in the same house as she was living in. And so of course, if there is a man who's coming and living in your house, she kind of got really scared. Thankfully, we spoke to senior police officers and they intervened. And at that point in time, at least, that thing was stopped and she was given a little bit of police protection. The PCR used to come and check on her. Right after the lockdown got over, we've got her protection orders and all. Thankfully, Saket Court was working, so she got that relief. However, a lot of people were not so fortunate. This was an instance of South Delhi, but a few people who called me from outside of Delhi, of course, did not have so much, the law was not so accessible for them. However, NCW then, I think, came up with a helpline, which was primarily a WhatsApp number that they had given. See, one needs to understand when one is in a lockdown and locked up in a house, they are basically in isolation from everybody else. So for them, if it's a smaller house, they can't even make a call and tell someone that, okay, I think I'm at risk. So NCW did a very wonderful job where they actually had these WhatsApp numbers that they had flashed on their website, and anybody who would call, I would actually give them that number only, and women could WhatsApp, and the police would then reach. So it was not that she had to really physically make a call and somebody would suddenly get alerted that my wife is making a call. It was only WhatsApp. It was a silent support that was given. I think that was extremely effective. I remember one of the instances that was quoted, I think, in newspapers a lot at that point in time was something that happened in France where, women would call pizza helpline. They would order pizza, and actually that if there were certain words and if they would say that, that would trigger the fact that maybe they were victims of domestic violence. I feel during the pandemic, the government did make an effort for it. Like Veena Ali ma'am just said, I think a lot of women realized that they were victim of domestic violence, something that they were probably ignoring for a very long time. I mean, I at least had a lot of more matters of divorce which suddenly came to me for filing after the lockdown was over, primarily because women who've become economically independent realized that there was a lot of gaslighting which was happening to them. And I think this is a new form of violence that I've at least started to see. And I think women have started to notice it more, especially in urban areas, where they feel that, they are told, you're not good enough, you don't do anything right. They are kind of, psychologically traumatized so much. And so therefore, they've started to understand, and especially when now everybody was living in the four corners of the house, they realized that they were actually victims of something that they did not know initially, or did not even realize that, they were. So I think, yeah, that's primarily what I would have to say on that question.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Ma'am, in furtherance of this, I have this next question, which I would like to put onto Advocate Bhati. Ma'am, definitely, as earlier both the panelists discussed, there is a framework. There are facilities which have been provided. There are helplines. However, we have seen that minimal amount of people actually come out. Means if there are 86% women who are actually being affected, there might be hardly 20% women who are coming out. So, ma'am, do you think that there is some reason for there is some fault line in the mechanism, or is exactly the effectiveness an issue? So, ma'am, if you can comment on the effectiveness or the reasons for people not accessing the available processes.
So, Jankrati, I think the fault lines are two very significant fault lines in not really the, all victims speaking up about it. It's easy to complain about somebody who's a stranger and who does not impact your everyday day-to-day life, which does not have to mean, I mean, if you complain against that person, you're not sharing a household with them, a life with them, a domestic relationship with them. That person could be the father of your children. That person could be, somebody very, very intimate. Now, I have always strongly believed that offenses against women are arising out of unequal power relationship. Not just like a power tussle that both want to get power, but power, their unequal positioning in the society. And a lot of crimes are committed on women just because they are women. So the victim is a woman is good enough reason for that crime to be committed on that person. See, the legal mechanism, like we have seen, and let me tell you, a legal mechanism for offenses against women is a very robust mechanism that we have in our country. For offenses which are more heinous, like I was mentioning, dowry death and bride burning, etc. Here, the onus actually moves on the accused person if some 4 or 5 criteria are met, which is a departure from the rest of our criminal jurisprudence that crime has to be established beyond shadow of reasonable doubt. It doesn't happen in normal crimes. So despite having such a robust mechanism, I feel the fault line is where we originate. And I think those, just to name them, the first issue, women continue to live in abusive domestic relationships for two reasons. One is, and the most important one, is not being economically empowered. A woman, if she walks out of that house, where does she go? Does she have the economic wherewithal to take care of herself, to take care of her children, of her loved ones, of herself? Or will she be leading a life of penury? And the second very important aspect is social stigma. My colleagues mentioned it briefly. Social stigma is something that plays very, very heavily on women's minds. And what will the society say? What will my friends say? What will my family say? My father say? What will my workplace say? Victims, women who are victims, when they go out in the system, and it's not just victims of domestic abuse, it's the same thing that happens with women victims, of offenses that happen on them everywhere. They are going into the system is like adding insult to their injury. So you feel that isse to khali injury to le rahe ho, you're not at least getting your salt rubbed on your wounds. So you are fine by taking you obviously we may not know about Bentham's theory of pleasure and pain, but we all assess in our minds am I better off by complaining? Am I worse off by complaining? Can I take this? Can I live a life without this? Am I dependent on that person? So these are the real issues that are there. And these are the two social fault lines. And I feel that the third very important legal fault line that we have is our systems are so slow. Our systems are so sluggish. These victims need succor. They need some kind of support system. They need, they need that assurance that they will not be thrown out, because the social setup is such. It is going to take generations for us to support our daughters how we support our sons as a society. And these battles of patriarchy, these battles of stereotypes have to be fought from homes. These battles will not, today women have really broken all bastions, all male bastions. Women have conquered them all. Not a single place remains, from the space to the Mount Everest to the deepest of the oceans, to the police mechanism, to the judicial mechanism. No place really remains untouched. But these are daughters who were given wings by their families. These are not daughters who were suppressed at home. So if you're given wings at your home, then you can go out and fight the world. But if at home your wings are clipped, how can you go out and fight anything else? You are just good for nothing. So that change has to really happen with generational change. But the system must become, more reactive, more proactive. We must have more sensitivity from the first point of contact of the police machinery. They have to be more sensitive about offenses against women. The judicial mechanism has to be much faster. And we at homes need to embrace our daughters with open arms and really understand what their problems are and try to help them, empathize with them, and be sensitive about it.
I completely agree with you, ma'am. And frankly, every good deed has to start from the home. So no change can be made unless it is from the within. So since we are on this framework, as of what setup mechanism we have, I have this next question for Advocate Rali, ma'am. Ma'am, as we all know that there is a framework wherein even ADR mechanism has been clubbed into it. And I would like to ask that, is ADR an effective mode to address the matrimonial issues, especially when we are talking about domestic violence? As we have already discussed that it is a hybrid set of framework which has civil plus criminal. But ma'am, definitely when it comes to abuse, people have dual opinions that
Yes.
being criminal in nature, why the people are being allowed to sit on the same table and settle of the matter. So ma'am, what would be your opinion? That is the first question. And furtherance, what has been your personal first-hand experiences, that being you have been a senior mediator since years, ma'am. So ma'am, how the people, the victims actually take in the proceedings. So ma'am, if you can please comment on this question.
Thank you, Jankriti. I think this question is otherwise also very close to my heart because I love mediation and I'm very passionate about mediation. See, there are two schools of thoughts on this. A set of people think and believe mediation to be an appropriate mode to be used for cases involving domestic violence. You talked about matrimonial issues. If anything less than domestic violence, of course, that is the best forum, no doubt about that. But whenever there is domestic violence involved, then definitely there are two school of thoughts. And like in any other cases, mediation has certain advantages. Informal procedure, confidentiality, mainly its ability to save and sustain relationships, because that is more prominent and very much coherent to this relationship, this sacred relationship which we address, and protect children from emotional traumas, who are the worst sufferers due to the long drawn process of litigation. Mediation's voluntary nature preserves the right of self-determination, because just now even Aishwarya was talking about self-determination in one way or the other for the woman, that one way we are given the wings and on the other position we are taken up, our wings are cut. So this way voluntary nature, of this process believes in self-determination of the parties, and it gives the freedom to the victim to accept or reject the outcome of this process. Another thought is that violence is a criminal act and perpetrators should not be left free without making him pay the cost, that is punishment or imprisonment, so that it works as a deterrent not only for that particular woman, but it conveys a larger message in the public also. When we deal with such type of matters during mediation, some of the parties do say, मुझे इसको लेसन सिखाना है, मुझे इसे मजा चखाना है. I have suffered a lot during this relationship, but that immediately brings down breakdown in the relationship. That's the important thing we must keep in mind. And if any woman is looking at building a relationship, definitely then it takes a lot of energy for that woman to come out of the house and talk. So people of this thought believe that a crime should not be forgiven, because the perpetrators of the criminal act need to be stopped for betterment of the society, because a larger message is going to be conveyed in the society. This way we have two swinging zones now. One is protecting the institution of family and future of children, and second is setting up standards for unacceptable behavior of certain people. Mediation, I believe, is the only platform where the parties look at everything objectively, and where certain things are talked in confidential process, because there is confidentiality attached with this process, which is very much important. Because see, if you go to court, everything becomes public. This is the only process where you can talk about your conflicts, not only disputes, because conflict is deep rooted. And I tell you, we generally, whenever we go for training, people need to understand the conflict. This platform provides them the place for talking about the conflicts, why this thing happened, how this thing happened, and along with the mediator, but the parties talk, the trust is built, and the process encourages the parties to open up. And this is a process where sometimes violence takes place, as we are just studying it, even Pallavi also spoke about this, but the perpetrator does not even realize that this is causing some adverse effect on the other person. Some people are by nature very loud, some people are otherwise abusive in language, but female may not accept it. Or sometimes some people raise their hand, and it is in our stride to accept it, because we have seen our mothers and our females in our house being beaten. So we don't take it as a violence. But when a woman is taking it as an abuse, so there is some platform where you are brought to the side of the woman through the help of the process of mediation, to understand how much hurt and how much effect is it causing to that female. So that is one way. It does help in that confidential process. And mediation helps even to the extent that you can involve even counselors. Mediators are not trained counselors, but you can involve some counselors. So where once this perception is cleared, and perception of the woman is also conveyed to the perception of the man, and they understand, and they both are in fact interested in building up relationship, because of husband not being aware that how much is this affecting the woman. At that point of time, even counselors can be involved, and many marriages can be saved. But of course, it is the outcome is in the hands of the female only. But I would like to share one example with you people. it was a matter which was brought to me at the pre-litigation stage, because in our mediation center at Samadhan, we are doing matters even at pre-litigation stage. When woman saw her husband and father-in-law in the mediation room, once or twice she was quiet, she did not open up. But at third day, she yelled at the pitch of her voice. And we could see the pain. And on that day, woman even showed, and she was highly educated woman, I must tell you. And just at the age of 30, she showed me her bones and all, which were broken. And then she had to go to the doctor, and she was in tears. And at that point of time, for the first time in her life, because her father had brought her to that platform, and he told me that we are very good friends, but on that particular day, she raised her voice even against her father and said, I have suffered a lot only because you never wanted me to go against this man before any forum. So that is how we have experienced at certain points. But these are the extreme cases. But wherever there is at the beginning of the stage of this perpetration of, you can say, victimization of the females, or there is some scope to build up the relationship, mediation must be used. And there are judgments to that effect, even of the Supreme Court, and Justice Ranjana Desai has said in K. Srinivas versus D.A. Deepa specifically, that even if when counselors are not in a position to help the parties to resolve their disputes, skilled mediators must be used for the purposes of resolving of issues between the parties. Thank you, Jagriti. I think it answers your question.
Yes, ma'am, it definitely does, because we all have this biased mindset that why ADR in such issues. So I think it definitely answers as to why it has been brought in. Ma'am, because now that we have discussed certain personal scenarios and ADR, Advocate Pratap, I'm sure this is a personal question. However, since we have heard how strongly you came up with your personal issues, ma'am, would you like to comment on how domestic abuse, when faced by people who have who we don't expect to have faced it? So, ma'am, how much struggle does it take to come up, and what exactly inspired you and motivated you to come out with your personal issues, ma'am? If you can answer, ma'am, it would be inspiration for everybody, ma'am.
No, thank you, Jagriti, for asking me such a difficult question. I think very few people know that I was married for 12 years. I look young, but I was married for 12 years, and I got divorced last year. It was I would say it was a good marriage. It was for some 8 years that we lived together. Unfortunately, I never knew that there was some kind of a violence which was there, because like ma'am said, you just don't realize that, you have some kind of a violence which is meted out on you. In my case, I could not have kids, and so there was a lot of problems that I faced subsequently. And the only thing I can say is that my parents were extremely supportive. My family was extremely supportive. They always told me that it's best that you move out of the marriage now that it's not working out. And I was the one, like Bhati ma'am just said, that no, it's about the honor of the family. I come from a family which is extremely distinguished, and that might not go very well. I was an MBA in finance, and I was into investment banking at that point in time. This is the initial years that I'm talking about. And so of course, then I had to leave my job in order to conceive and things like that. And there was IVF and things like that kept going on. However, then of course, I joined Supreme Court, and very slowly I started to, it was initial years when I was just a junior lawyer. And slowly I started to find a little bit of confidence. I started to understand the law, and that the fact that, the law was there to protect me. But I never thought that, law was so important, so much more important than what my parents and my family required. However, it was my father who very clearly told me that after being 8 years into the marriage, he told me that I think you're wasting your time. It's important that you step out. And my entire family, my mother, my brother, my sister, everybody supported me. And that was the very year that I took my AOR examination. The very next year, I actually cleared it. But it was a tough time. It continued to be a tough time until last year when I got divorced. We did try for mediation. I was being a lawyer. Unfortunately, not the kind of lawyer who wanted to assert her rights. I was the one who wanted that things should be settled off. And I had some very good senior advocates who recommended that it is best that you should not be fighting. It is important that you should find a mutual settlement area. And somehow I convinced my now ex-husband that, it's important that you accept that, um, there was violence which was meted out on me, different kinds of violence, which I might not be very comfortable talking about just now. But I don't think he realized it, but he did realize that the fact that he was not giving me divorce for 4 years was in itself some form of cruelty which he was inflicting upon me, and more so on my parents, because my mother suffered a paralysis attack at that point in time. My father had a heart attack around the same time, so it was not something which was really good. I think it was a time which was very difficult for all of us. But then my parents saw that, I've started to pick up myself up. I've started to build up things. I stay happy. I think parents want that more than anything else. So it's been wonderful, and I have Aishwarya ma'am to look up to, Veena ma'am to look up to. The Supreme Court corridor is filled with such amazing women lawyers that, every day you just come out of it and you're motivated to do something good. So I think, bits and pieces I kind of picked up myself, and I'm really happy that things I have moved on. But those times were, I think those times that you've suffered violence, it just keeps coming back at you. It just comes out from nowhere. And even though I have never been very open about the time that I went through, but my parents said that it's important that you share it, because then a lot of people who might be going through the same thing would probably have the confidence to realize that there is always light at the end of the tunnel. So that's about it.
Thank you,
Brilliant.
ma'am.
Applaudable.
More power to you, because it takes lots of courage to speak about personal issues.
That's more important.
Yes.
Noticed.
The reason being that because now we have somebody to look up to, and because you have seen it very closely. This next question, in continuance of the same, is that because the first responders, as we know, are the police officials. However, obviously due to pandemic, they have their own preoccupied duties, and not everything can be assigned as smoothly as expected. So, ma'am, apart from this, are there any supplementary bodies like the NGOs, are there any self-help groups which can help in such domestic abuses, ma'am? If you have some framework which has been already assigned along with the legislative framework.
Sorry, I think I got lost for a second there. Am I audible now? All right, I'll just very quickly tell you about an incident that happened many years back while I was still married. It was late at night that it happened, and my father was at that point in a different city. And he called up his very close friend to go and look into the house where I was living in, just to check if I'm okay or not. And he respectfully denied for whatever reasons. And even though I was completely safe, there was never physical violence which was meted out. It was always a lot of different kind of torture that was there. And anyway, so I still remember that my father felt extremely helpless at that point in time. Now cut to the current position. I have a very close friend who I obviously helped with her problems, and she has 3 girls, and because of the girl child, her in-laws were creating trouble for her. And she knew that nobody would come to her help. The police officers would not. But thankfully, they have this building WhatsApp group. So she had the numbers of women who were close by. I think the first responders here typically are always the neighbors. And if you would remember, a couple of years back, there used to be this Ghanti Bajao campaign that used to come. I think that has been extremely relevant and extremely effective even to date. I remember my friend just sent a message to the ladies' WhatsApp group that she had, And she tells me that some 10 or 12 women came and started to ring the bell when violence was being meted out on her. I think that was the most effective way. And someone then called up the PCR and the police came. Because when you are suffering from violence at that point in time, it is not that you have your mobile phone with you, that you're going to call up 100 number and, get the police assistance. It's always those people. And they would always inevitably know, like Veena ma'am just said, the neighbors would always know if something is going on. Probably because they have their ears always attached to what is happening in the other person's house. But thankfully, so they always come, and they are the best first responders that one has, because then they can, one, they become your witness, and two, of course, they ask for the appropriate help.
Thank you so much, ma'am. So now that we have seen it in depth, I think we need to get into how judiciary is taking on this matter. Advocate Bhati, this next question I would like to pose on to you. Now, definitely, I know that you have been a strong crusader for gender justice, and we have heard lots of panel discussions in which you have said so, ma'am. Ma'am, the judiciary has definitely given various interpretations and thereby has expanded the scope, which has been connected to the marriages and the domestic abuse. Definitely, we know there has been a recent verdict which was related to right of women to the shared household. Or there have been continuously growing ambit of what all can fall within domestic abuses. There has to be the continuity of violence. The maintenance has been revised continuously. So, ma'am, since judiciary is also marching towards gender justice, what exactly and how would you like to elucidate about the stand of judiciary as of now, ma'am?
So, Jankriti, you have rightly pointed out that judiciary has played a very pivotal role. But before I answer that to you, I have to congratulate and commend Pallavi for her strong. Takes a lot of courage and a lot of. She's a fighter and a fierce and a dignified fighter at that. So that is a really amazing quality that she has, and keep up the great work, Pallavi. I never knew this about you. Of course, are a wonderful colleague from our corridor, and you are somebody who is always well prepared with your briefs, so focused, so professional with your work. And I think, Jagrati, no, I did not set out to be a crusader. When I look at my journey, I feel that, okay, it has some glimpses of being a crusader, but I think when you realize that what a huge loss it is to families, to societies, to nations, to humanity, if 1/2 of its population cannot go out and contribute to the best manner that they are capable of. I mean, you have a investment banker, Supreme Court lawyer who's been here, who's sitting with us, sharing her story with us. And if you don't allow, and its family support is very important, but if you don't allow that woman to come out and contribute, it's not a man versus woman battle, and you will not find all crusaders as women. Everyone who's concerned about equilibrium in the society will be a crusader. And it is ultimately a battle against patriarchy. It's the battle against that stereotypical mindset. And I will tell you out of my own experience, Jankriti, it is, I have found numerous and amazing women who have been very sensitive to women's issues. And there are enough and more women who, when they come in a position of power and authority, they join the patriarchy. They forget that they were young women once, and they forget the battles that they have fought, and they go and join that patriarchal mindset. So that is the problem that we have. Thankfully, the journey of our judiciary has been a sterling journey. It has been an absolute journey. Supreme Court has been a lighthouse when it comes to gender issues and gender parity, gender dignity in true sense of the word. We, of course, our constitutional framework has been very robust. At a time in 1947 to 1949, when Constitution was being made, half the world did not give women voting rights. US had given, the most respected democracy had given women voting rights up to the decade of 1950s. Of course, the 19th Amendment was 100 years back in the US Constitution, but for women of all color and shape and size to get, Switzerland gave voting rights only in 1971. 71, and our constitution is made in 47 to 49. UAE has given voting rights, of course, that we know only in 2015. They've allowed women right to vote only, a right to drive only in 2018. So it has, when you look from a world perspective, you realize our constitutional standards, our constitutional principles were framed in a very robust manner to give a very solid base to women, and not just true equality, but an affirmative equality, making it mandatory for state to have affirmative action in favor of women to really ensure equality. And then Supreme Court has carried that that baton, that lighthouse of the constitutional principles in a very apt manner from the early decades, where women had to fight battle of becoming pregnant while holding a job, to one of the initial matters of the 1950s decade was that central government employment required women to take permission for getting married. It was only for women employees. Male employees did not need to take permission. So, I mean, punishing women for their for who they were biologically, who they were, and Supreme Court has negated it from the beginning. Whether it was disparities in whatever form and sense, and right up to one of the judgments that I had the privilege of representing, extremely courageous women officers of the Indian Defense Forces, Army, Navy. We have 2 judgments now. Air Force is still pending, but there also similar excuses were being made that women, to deny women parity in command positions, on permanent commission opportunities, denying them parity. And excuses were like biological duties are more, soldiers come from that social background that they will not be able to take, commands from women officers, etc. Supreme Court struck it down in such beautiful words that every time you see these judgments, you feel proud, of your Supreme Court, that what an important role Supreme Court has played, and where we would have been without that, Supreme Court strongly affirming, dignity of women, and even to the extent of taboo areas. So Supreme Court initially decades did not venture into the personal laws. They would correct the wrong that came before them, whether it was the Shah Bano's case, whether it was Sarla Mudgal's case, where husband converted into Islam to marry another woman. So the Supreme Court every time corrected that wrong that was before them, but then said, well, Article 44, do something about it. You need to bring uniform civil code. But 5 years back, when triple talaq was being challenged, Supreme Court this time did not shy. And it's beautiful how Supreme Court has evolved and risen up to that, to that, or quashing the definition of adultery, which made it an offense if a woman was having sexual relationships outside of her marriage without the consent or connivance of husband. This is not the definition of adultery that's understood in matrimonial law. This is understood only in penal law. So Supreme Court has struck it down with very emphatic terms, and I think we are very, very, very proud of the journey that Supreme Court has undertaken in this. But ultimately, it comes down to the journeys that we undertake at our homes, at our workplaces. And one thing I always feel, I mean, Pallavi was very kind to say that our corridors are such inspiring places, and I echo her sound. I feel that for women who are essentially in male bastions, we are not in these sprint races. We are not even in marathon races. We are in marathon relay races, where we have to take the baton from our previous generation. We have to run our race, and we have to gracefully pass on that baton to our next generation. And it is not the journey of one woman alone. It is the journey of the generation. And we all need to, and we can't relay race. You can't have individual winners. We either win together or we lose together. And there is no other way to win this race rather than running our part gracefully and passing on the batons. So I think that is going to give us hope and take us far. That's what I feel.
Absolutely.
Wonderfully narrated, ma'am. I'm sure that how strongly you are striving to pass off the baton to the next generations. And I'm sure they are going to have less of struggles because you have brought in that much of power to them, ma'am. In furtherance of these discussions, I would like to pose this next question even to Advocate Raleigh. Ma'am, even as judiciary has been coming up with lots of cases, as we just now discussed. Obviously, there has been, during the pandemic, there was a very sudden shift, which was regarding shared household. Um, because this is something which not everybody might know in general parlance, how the judiciary said that the shared household can be availed even by the women who have filed domestic violence cases. So, ma'am, do you have an opinion about this? Because even in mediation, you might have heard about such cases where women are being denied, the right to stay at the same home against whom they have filed the abuse complaints. So, ma'am, how do you want to narrate about such a striking judgment which came in recently?
See, so far as that judgment is concerned, even Aishwarya just now referred about that. That was there were different views coming from various high courts, and a lot of debate was going on. You know how this arose when marriages are arranged. At that point of time, a different scene is given altogether. That this is our house, we are going to stay here. This is the property, that is the property, and ultimately, when it comes to separation of the relationship and severing relationship, at that point of time they always give up their responsibility and they say this house doesn't belong to your husband, so you can't claim anything. So based on that, because marriages are not between two people in India, they are the two persons in India, they are between two families. So that was the, I think, the spirit of this judgment. And they said shared household means when where they have been living together before they are married, even from since their marriage, and even when they are not in marital relationship, something akin to that, where they have been living under the same roof, that should be considered as shared household. And with this judgment, many people have got that relief, where they were at the brink of leaving that accommodation which they were occupying. And more particularly, because our law permits to make the process very cumbersome, we lawyers are very much equipped with such type of brilliant ideas, that we separately had been filing suits and proceedings on behalf of the parents, and asking that and getting stay orders that this lady should not be allowed even to walk into this house. So all these things, I think, have been taken care of by this judgment, and law has been set right, absolutely taking care of the protection we need to give to the woman. See, we are talking about one part of our generation, where we are sitting like this and we are talking. I'm very happy Aishwarya has taken up this and wants to pass it on to other generation. But we need to even look at people who are in remote areas and there is no one who is there to help them. So for that, I think this law is going to take care of those people also. And it has its own effect. At least that confidence has come that there is shelter available to me. And in mediation also, you know, the strength and weaknesses of the parties are measured based on the judgments. We have the skill to ask them the questions in such a way where people have to answer, more particularly if parties are supported by their lawyers, that what about this judgment? How can you force the woman to get out of this house? In that situation, people do come out with option to provide accommodation to the female, even if they are severing relationship. Some may get a chance to say when there are children, okay, we will give in the names of the children, or somebody will say, I will give in the joint name of the child and the mother, but they do agree to provide. So judgments play a very important role, more particularly such powerful judgments to evaluate the strengths and weaknesses of the parties, more particularly women in this case.
Thank you so much for elucidating on this matter, ma'am, because I'm sure now women might know this additional right which they have been given, because it is actually surprising why women have to be said that now you have this right, whereas that is not said for the men. But I know that there is also a flip side to this entire scenario, which I might like to know your opinions about. Advocate Pratap, I would like to pose this next question unto you. Definitely, we know that there have been women, there have been a certain grade of people who definitely are in need of such services. However, there is also misuse of law, which is detrimental to this framework, because a framework which has been brought in to help certain people should not also be detrimental to others. Ma'am, would you like to comment on this scenario? Because for example, 498A has been a question which sprung again and again. Similarly, the DV Act now. So would you like to comment on this topic, ma'am?
Sure, I think yes, there is a lot of misuse that is happening. I mean, so many times and often on the instance of women, we see the entire bouquet of cases are presented to the other side, where you would have the criminal matters and civil matters and all kinds that one could practically post. And I have realized that, you know, this misuse has brought about a lot of, see, for the society, and especially as far as patriarchy is concerned, they only require one instance to shame all women. They will go ahead and paint all of us with the same color. Unfortunately, the misuse by a lot of women has brought about that, and that has shown all of us in a very negative light, to the extent that sometimes 498A, when there is a cruelty which has actually taken place, is not registered for the simple reason that they, a lot of times police officers feel that, you know, there is no such evidence to suggest. However, the misuse, I think, is getting curtailed with important, you know, steps which are being taken by state governments that we've been seeing. But I think, like Bhati ma'am said, the biggest issue still is the pendency of cases that we are watching at the moment. For instance, there are DV cases which are going on where the protection officer would not come for an entire year, and the date will be given. And this I'm talking about Delhi, not even far away. I will be surprised that, you know, what would be the state in, let's say, the most backward districts of Uttar Pradesh, for instance. So these problems are there. The law which is already existing is not, you know, working in such a manner as to make it accessible to women. Especially women from rural areas do not even know, they are not even aware of the rights that they have. I think that capacity building needs to be done in some manner so that they are aware. I mean, the shared household judgment is something that probably lawyers in you know, the urban areas would know, and they would then pass it on. But probably lawyers in the tier 3 cities would not even be aware of it, and therefore not be able to use it. I mean, that I feel is a problem that is there. So there is no such thing as a you know, a concrete manner in which you can correct a right and you know, end the wrong. But a lot depends upon us as lawyers also, that we might a lot of us would refrain from advising our clients to take steps which are definitely not in the right capacity. As a matter of fact, I've seen media, you know, lawyers not telling their clients not to go for mediation because they feel that, you know, mediation would not help. As a matter of fact, I think Samadhan, very recently, one of my clients actually went to Samadhan, and you know, I can see that there is a way in which pre-litigation mediation is then definitely going to avoid any litigation or an ugly litigation which would have taken place between a family. I think that Samadhan is doing an excellent job that way, to stop unnecessary and frivolous litigation, which unfortunately has started to happen a lot these days.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for narrating on this issue. Now, there has been a major concern, which I would like to pose it as a question to Advocate Bhati. Ma'am, definitely there are certain issues which, though related to domestic violence, herein I would be talking about the scope and ambit of domestic violence, ma'am. Certain issues never see the ray of the light. These might be issues like rape against the men, or there are certain intimate relationships which are not into the ambit of domestic violence. For example, we are talking about same-sex relationships or live-in relationships. So, ma'am, since there are the definition of intimate relationships might be very expansive and exhaustive, and there is a very stark dichotomy at the present legal framework. So, ma'am, can a gender neutral or all inclusive law can be a possibility in future? Because looking from the top, from where you are, from the Supreme Court, do we see that in the near times, or how would you like to suggest if that can be done? So that's the question, ma'am.
My view is that that is the ultimate aim that we have to strive at. We have to look at getting there. That is what our aim should be. Gender neutral religion neutral. Don't forget that. Today we are bound in the shackles of religion also in our personal laws when it comes to issues of marriage, divorce, and succession. In fact, uniform civil code is today a misnomer, because we have uniform civil code in all other areas of our life. It is only these three areas, otherwise how we deal with our employers, our employees, how I make my house, how I run a business partnership, how I pay taxes, how I get electricity, telephone connections, water, everything is governed by gender neutral, religion neutral laws. Even adoption is now, which is a huge part of family law, adoption is today governed by gender neutral and religion neutral laws by the Juvenile Justice Act and the CARA guidelines. Issue remains only with matrimonial laws and succession laws. So these are the only areas which are governed by personal laws. So while we look at where we have to go, we can't be jumping to that. I mean, we want to get to the rooftop, sure. But today we are at, where are we? We are at a step that if we try to jump to the rooftop, we are going to, I'm afraid we might fall on our faces. And we may not be ready to get there right now. Abuse is a huge problem that is happening. Pallavi addressed it very beautifully. But Jankriti, let me ask you one question. Tell me one law in the whole world that is not abused, that is not misused. From the most heinous of the offenses, laws, NDPS, murder, to domestic issues, of course, all laws are abused. That is why we have the system of justice delivery mechanism. But the problem in India is really happening is because our systems have become so slow. So the false cases, it is taking forever for them to be knocked out of the courts, and the cases which really need, which need to be righted in any manner, they are also taking time. So that delay is destroying the whole system. But talking about relationships which are ostensibly not protected, let me tell you, a lot has changed qua live-in relationships. Now live-in relationships now have the same protection that is there for all wrongs that may happen, for all kinds of live-in relationships. Marriage kind of relationships are also protected. Same-sex relationships still remain a gray area. We still have to cover a lot of ground there. But let's not forget, just 4 years back, they have been decriminalized. We have had such a somersault, topsy-turvy issue there, where first Delhi High Court in Naz Foundation said that it is decriminalized, but then the Supreme Court said no. But then again, in privacy judgment, 9 judges said that reasoning was wrong. Privacy becomes a fundamental right, and then of course we saw ultimately in the Navteej Johar case that it has been struck down. 377 has been struck down. So it is fundamental rights. Supreme Court has very beautifully said in one of its judgments that fundamental rights are like empty vessels. Every generation has to fill in those vessels with the wisdom of its time. It is up to us how we fill up those wisdoms. And the RBG, the famous RBG, huge iconic figure in the world judiciary, who we lost last month, even she used to say, courts and laws can do nothing unless the citizenry is vigilant. If the citizenry is not vigilant, then you can't get the interpretations that you want. The journey cannot happen. So we have to, and India has done well. India has done well. Transgender is recognized as a third gender. For these so-called fringe relationships which exist in the society, India has given a lot of recognition. Our legal system and our judicial system has ensured robust recognition for them. But again, the red flag is we should not be in a rush to jump through the loops. We have to, again, to quote RBG, true enduring and lasting difference can only happen one step at a time. If we want true enduring and lasting change, that can only happen one step at a time. Of course, sometimes these one step at a time becomes a long process. We get impatient. We are anyways a generation of instant coffee, instant noodle, instant everything. But some things we cannot get in an instant. It has to go through that process. And ultimately, why just these offenses of domestic abuse? Ultimately, rape also should become a gender neutral and religion neutral offense. Sexual harassment itself should become a gender neutral and religion neutral offense. But till that happens, we have to take one step at a time and really get ourselves ready, because change is not going to happen. Minor marriages have been illegal in India for half a decade, half a century. Still, we see that is very, very rampant. So we need to keep pace with the change that we really want to happen in our lives.
That was actually an enlightening mode, because people usually just see where the loopholes are. People don't see how far we have come. And that's
Yes.
how you have very beautifully explained how our journey has been and how slowly but successfully we need to move forward. So thank you so much for those wise words. I would like to come to the summing up of sessions, but before that, I would like to pose this last question to Advocate Rali, ma'am. Ma'am, now that we have seen the entire journey from what abuse was, how far the pandemic has affected us, what was the flip side, and how accessible it can be made. So, ma'am, at the conclusion, what exactly would you suggest in few points that the action plan should be for any person regarding this? As in, if any person is going through violence, what exactly a person should do? What can be the action plan, and how successfully they should make their first step to reach to reach out? That is how I would like you to say. Thank you, ma'am.
Jagriti, actually, Aishwarya has already spoken a lot on the laws and the baby steps taken by various authorities, Supreme Court, and now putting everything in the track, to give us something to move on. So I can just sum up, picking up from her, that there are some laws which are empowering laws, apart from those who provide us redressal for the wrongs against women. So keeping in mind these two categories, of course, there are laws, as Pallavi also talked about, 498A, we talk about 304B, and Dowry Prohibition Act. So that is something which was already in existence, and it is continuing. But there were certain areas which were very gray areas, but which have been taken care of by passing of the Protection of Women from Domestic Violence Act 2005, where the perpetrators which were earlier being ignored, like name calling, not providing food, not providing economical help, you can say even emotional exploitation, now can be taken care of under this act, which was never recognized as an abuse. So law has, you can say, covered a long journey, and now this act provides for more effective protection of rights of women guaranteed under various laws and our constitution, as Aishwarya said. So if you feel you don't deserve to be treated the way you are being treated, now this law takes care. That is the DV Act now. And what else can give us a bigger lesson? That is then the Thappad movie, where one thappad of the husband, throughout the movie, what has been conveyed, and I think this movie during this lockdown work played a very important role. Many people never realized that a thappad from her husband could cause violence to that extent that she should take a call. And her interaction with father, when she said, "Kya wo maar sakta hai? Kya wo galat nahi hai?" So one galat step was enough. And in the absence of apology from husband, there was an acknowledgement, no doubt about that, because he said, "Aage se nahi karunga." But what about the one which has already been done? And look at the counterpart of that lady, that heroine's counterpart, that maidservant, who also took it in her stride. That marna is, kya ho gaya, wo maar deta hai, roz raat ko jata hu to wo maar deta hai. So see, in that situation, now the difference has to be understood by us. So if I do not want to be treated as a woman by my husband or anybody other than in my family, maybe brother-in-law or father-in-law or father or anybody, I do not want to be treated in a particular way, I must raise my voice. I must acknowledge it. So two things are important. First, I should understand that there is something which is not called for, which is not called in the good behavior panel. And second is, I must know how to deal with it. Since we have already spoken about rise of these type of violences in the pandemic, and more particularly because there was time for introspection also, You realized it more because of the given circumstances. You were not moving out, you were in isolation. Sometimes that exploitation, emotional exploitation overburdened you so much that you realized that this is violence and I must raise my voice. Now, in the given circumstances, when you all are together during pandemic particularly, you can't even raise your voice, you can't be vocalized about this. And as Pallavi pointed out, that there are mechanisms provided to us where you don't have to call someone. Now NCW has provided various modes, and I don't know whether you noticed it or not. There were two family dramas which were going on the TV throughout. That was Mahabharat and this Ramayana. During those TV shows, there were flashes coming for giving these numbers below, so that victim could just make a WhatsApp message. Even a missed call on that WhatsApp number was sufficient for the authorities to waken up and reach up to you. So not only this, even I think the chairperson of the National Commission Women herself was also interacting quite a lot on social media and encouraging people during that time. And that can still be adopted because it is still continuing. And apart from that, the Delhi State Legal Services authorities are also working very enthusiastically on this line to protect women at various levels, you know, and there have been a helpline number, and I'll say there is toll-free number which is 1516, which is available to women. You can just dial it. Even a missed call on this number, you will get responses from the authorities. And one thing more, special training was provided to the working staff to sensitize them, because somebody who is already being victimized and there is an environment of violence in the house, if somebody reaches there without maintaining the protocol and the requirement of the woman, in the sense she doesn't want to basically to see the spurge in the situation, in that maintaining all that confidentiality, all that sensitivity, the people have been reaching to those women through these numbers. Even missed call have been. And apart from this, there were during this pandemic only food supply shops were open, mother dairies were open, or chemists were open, and there were these numbers. There were numbers given by the authorities that if you reach there, you will find a notice lying on that chemist shop or mother dairy, and you just give a missed call from them. So what was expected, that women still be reaching to those shops to get something for the house. So those numbers are working, helpline numbers are working, and of course initially somebody will reach you, will connect with you, try to understand the sensitivity involved and how much is affecting you adversely. And if counseling is enough, counselors are being provided, and those counselors were attached from all the counseling sessions which were being taken by family court counselors. So those counselors were working, and various level counselors were involved for this online program. And in case things were not working, then definitely under the act, the authorities were being contacted on behalf of the victims, and victims were being connected to those forums. And of course, were getting all type of help. Legal help was being provided to those people under the legal services authorities. And wherever things were not working at their level, or the violence, the scale of the violence was beyond their control, then definitely the matters were referred further to protection officers or even to the magistrates to get them the reliefs which they are entitled to. And that facility can still be obtained by everyone. But at the helms of affair, I would like to say that still woman should try to empower herself, to negotiate herself within the family, to get what she wants or what she needs and what she likes. First, that expression is must, not just suffer it because you feel that it is in the stride. As Aishwarya also said in the beginning, I would like to add to that, that when woman gets married, the house to which you belong to, that is not yours. And if you leave the house where you are, then you are nowhere. So you have to make people realize that you also are a human being and you need some special treatment, because you are the homemaker. You are the homemaker, you are providing even for economic support to the family. So it is important to make people realize, and for that it is important for everyone to empower oneself, to negotiate for oneself. And then if these things don't work, authorities are there, reach up to them, It's not always advisable to break the family, but somewhere realization is important. And for that realization, you have to reach somewhere so that the life goes on for you as well as it is going on for others.
Thank you so much for this remarkable conclusion. Now that we have come to the end of panel discussion, I think I am being greedy to ask one last thing from each of you. Definitely, this is not regarding the panel discussion, but since you all have seen the struggle, you have been the person of where you are. I would request each one of you to give some message from your own for the coming generation so that they know how to strive hard and where to reach, ma'am. Any personal message? How do we start with Advocate Bhati, ma'am? Please, ma'am.
Well, it's an old saying, but it is a saying that I love a lot, and that's how I'm going to end. That in the battle between the stream and the rock, the stream always wins, and not by its strength, but by its perseverance. And this has been a beautiful journey. We have come a long way. Like I already mentioned, we are in a relay race together. We all have to win this, and we all have to go the miles together. So let's become strengths for each other. The world can be really so much more beautiful if one half of its population is able to contribute to the best of its capacity. It's not like every girl will be a lawyer. It's not like every woman wants to be an army officer. But then every man also does not want to be an army officer or a lawyer. I mean, it is ultimately up to what your aptitude and what your drive is. But whatever is your aptitude and your drive, you should be able to contribute and build the nation, build the society to the best possible manner that we are all capable of. And if we believe that strength is there in us, then we have that strength. Everything else will fall into place. It has to start from the will, from within us.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for your message. I'm sure that we all will strive together towards the end. Advocate Veena, ma'am, would you like to bait in some message to the generation?
See, since I am a now trained mediator, I deal with the biases of people. And bias of the people, general public, is that females cannot do certain things. And we also need to deal with our own bias. When we treat ourselves women and we feel that I am one of the weaker section. So first I have to deal with my own bias that I can do this as a counterpart of my male. So that once I deal with that, I'm also a normal human being like a male person, and I can achieve whatever I can do that within my own resources and limitations. So I need to deal with my own bias that I am a female. No, I am a human being, and I have been given all that what others have been given. I can achieve it. That should be the strive.
Thank you so much, ma'am. I'm sure that the strength which will come from within will push us forward continuously. Advocate Pratap, your message to the generation, please.
I will actually just translate what Aishwarya ma'am said into Hindi. It's a small couplet that I read many years back, which says, हम भी दरिया हैं, हमें भी अपना हुनर मालूम है, जिस तरफ मुड़ जाएंगे रास्ते खुल जाएंगे. So I think I would just leave at that.
Thank you so much to all the three panelists. I must say that none of us might be wanting, none of the attendees might be wanting to end this session this soon. However, I understand that we all are at paucity of time. So with this, since we have reached the end of this panel discussion, I would like to extend my sincere and heartfelt gratitude to each one of you, because we all know how busy you have been, but you have been consistently trying to get into this and help us with this. Thank you so much, ma'am. And also, I'm sure that the insights which each one of you have shared with us are key takeaways for us, because each and every instance which you have shared and the delightful experiences which we have discussed are something which we would remember forever. So it was an honor to have each one of you. And I would like to transfer the screen to Mr. Atul for his concluding remarks. Thank you so much. Mr. Atul Singh.
Yeah. Very good evening, madam. This is Atul Singh, Vice President, AR Group. And I'd like to thank Madam Ashwarya, Madam Veena, Madam Pallavi, given us your valuable time on Sunday and enlightened us with your valuable guidance, discussions, and suggestions. So I'd also do namaskar with my folded hand to all of three eminent speaker and pranam. So this is really best opportunity we got to listen you on a Sunday, disturbing on your family life also on Sunday, but really highly obliged, madam. And all I would like to tell, all over India, big numbers join today as attendees, our law students and advocates as well, even general people to listen you. So I would like to announce, I will take more 20-30 seconds in between this pandemic period. Last 7 months, our all advocates till Gram Panchayat, especially the district courts and taluka level, we suffered income, crunch of income. So AIR launched one AIR Infotech app also for all our advocates and law students, because you know, madam, AIR is the oldest, since more than 100 years old company. So it's our duty to support. So it's and head notes, our AR head notes is also very, I think, one of the best. If it is your observation also maybe. So we are offering this to all our lawyers till Gram Panchayat and law students to go at the share it with the AR Infotech and just install it with the Play Store. And soon we are going to launch at the App Store also. So this will give the, since 1950, all the judgments, all law reports, all the high courts, since 1935, Privy Council, the all more than 4,000 articles, so many things. So this is for the all my law fraternity. So thank you so much, madam. Again, all three, my eminent speaker. Thanks a lot. So nice of you.
Thank you so much,
Thank
ma'am.
you very
Thank
much. Pleasure.
And thanks to my our moderator also, Jagriti.
Yes.
It's
Yeah.
a
Thank you so
Wonderful.
She has
very,
been a
very
wonderful moderator,
well,
I must say,
yeah,
madam.
well planned.
Very dynamic.
Yes,
She got the
dynamic.
best out of all of us. I think the discussion became more
Yes.
meaningful because Jankruti brought out the best in all of us. So thank
Yes,
you very,
yes.
very much.
Thank
Thank
you
you
so
very
much.
much.
Thank you to all
Pleasure
attendees.
being sharing panel with both of you also.
Thank you.
It was
madam.
wonderful.
Wishing you
Thank you so
all a
much,
very
ma'am.
happy Diwali in advance. Please have a safe and sound Diwali. See you
Yes,
soon.
thank
Yes,
you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Happy
Thank
Bye-bye.
you,
Diwali.
madam. Happy Diwali. Thank you.